Hello, Aries. I know you didn't come here for just another horoscope. You came because something inside your heart is stirring, a quiet yet powerful feeling that maybe it's time for everything to change. You've been silent long enough. You've endured more than most will ever know. You've lived as if your light needed permission just to shine, but not anymore, Aries. You don't need to be chosen to glow, because the light has always been within you. And today we're going back to the road you've walked for the past 15 years, a path that felt like a burden at times, but turned out to be the sacred training ground of your soul, and you made it through. Now take a deep breath, because the first part of this story will take you back to where it all began, to the moment you thought you were falling apart, when in truth, God was rebuilding you from within. Sometimes the long silence in your life is not a punishment, but the softest echo from God. And sometimes the years that seemed the darkest were actually where your soul was being carved, so it could shine brightest when the time came. Aries, if you're hearing this, and your heart feels a quiet ache, it's not because you're weak. It's your soul nodding gently, remembering a long road it never had the words to name. For the past 15 years, you haven't just survived. You've been a silent flame, still burning, no matter how fierce the winds blew. They saw you standing, but they never knew how many times you collapsed in silence. They called you strong, but they didn't see the moments. You knelt before everything that almost broke you and still chose to forgive. Life doesn't sound an alarm when a karmic cycle begins. It just leads you quietly into a journey where you're forced to hold your own light, even as everyone else walks away. That's not punishment, it's training, a sacred kind of training, only for souls that have been chosen. For others, 15 years may be 3 jobs, a few failed relationships, but for you it was every time you fell and rose again with empty hands but eyes still fixed on the light. You loved the wrong people, gave your heart at the wrong time, trusted the wrong promises, and lost yourself more than once. But instead of growing bitter, you kept choosing love. Instead of shutting down, you kept your doors open, and that is what makes you different, Aries. You once believed no one ever chose you, but the truth is you were the one chosen to walk through the dark and bring back the light for those who will come after. You are the one who lights the lantern in the night, not the one who waits for morning. If the soul had a school, you've studied in the deepest chambers. No one knows the silence you've carried. No one sees the pain you've never spoken. And because of that, no one can understand the power that now trembles inside your chest, a power that no longer needs to be proven. Astrology says Pluto, the planet of deep power and death, is pulling back. Saturn, the planet of limits and lessons, is softening. This isn't just movement in the sky, it's a tremor at the soul level. A gate is closing, quietly without warning, and as you step through it, you are no longer the same. You may never receive a thank you for everything you've endured. There are no medals for those who kept a kind heart after betrayal, but somewhere far away, in a frequency only God can hear, a small bell has rung. It's time, not for revenge, but for return, not to win, but to finally live as you. Because you walked through fire and still kept your heart. Because you accepted the truth without losing your grace. And because you reached the end of that lonely road with just enough light to shine for someone else. You see it now. 15 years was never a sentence. It was a sacred retreat where your soul was forged through trials. No one is locked inside karma. It's just only a few are brave enough to walk out. And you, Aries, you did. So, if anyone ever made you feel like you were weak, like you weren't good enough, kind enough, worthy enough, smile, because you know they were never strong enough to understand the blazing light within you. The light that only appears after you've melted in fire. And now, as you walk slowly through these new days, no longer trying to prove, no longer holding blame, you'll begin to feel something strange, peace. Not the kind others give you, but the kind that comes when you no longer betray yourself, a peace deep enough that you no longer need to fight. You don't have to chase, you don't have to beg anyone to stay. And in that stillness, you finally hear what your heart has been whispering all along. Love is not where we lose ourselves, but where we learn to stay. Can you hear it? That's the door opening ahead, a new chapter, and the place where your heart finally comes home for the first time and forever. There are wounds that don't bleed. They don't leave bruises you can see, they just quietly fracture the things you once believed in. And love, for Aries, has often been the birthplace of those cracks. You once loved with everything inside you. No calculation, no defenses, nothing held back. You loved like a first fire burning brightly, because you believed someone out there would feel the warmth, but they turned away. Not because you weren't enough, but because they never learned how to stand still in the presence of something that real. Maybe you believed that if you loved hard enough, waited long enough, they would change. They would stay. They would see you. But somehow, the deeper your love, the lonelier you felt. You stopped losing sleep waiting for them to come back, and started losing sleep because you could no longer recognize the person in the mirror. Love was supposed to be where you found each other, but for you, it became the place where you slowly disappeared, bit by bit, just to keep the other person from feeling overwhelmed. You lowered your voice. You folded your dreams. You quietly shut the doors of your own heart, because somewhere deep down you were afraid that if you shined too brightly, they would leave, and they did. No reason, no closure, just a hollow space, and far too many unanswered questions. You sat alone in the dark, hand over your chest, asking quietly, "What did I do wrong?" But you did nothing wrong, you just loved too honestly. In a world still afraid to look truth in the eye, you loved like a soul that's lived 1,000 lives. Where love is not a transaction, but an offering. But you forgot something. That real love, the kind that heals, has to begin inside. You can't fill someone else's cup when yours has already run dry. Aries, you didn't come here to learn how to be loved. You came here to learn how not to lose yourself for anyone. And true love, it doesn't make you shrink. It lets you stay whole and burn in your full brilliance. Then one day you wake up. The light slips in through the curtains like every other morning. But instead of reaching for a text that's never coming, you just sit still and breathe. And in that stillness, you realize you've come home to yourself. No longer whispering in your mind, "Please see me." No longer chasing love like it's the cure for your emptiness. No longer wondering, "Maybe I'm just not enough." Because now you remember, you don't need someone else to fill that space inside you. You just need your own presence, whole, soft, and true. Love is no longer the reward for your sacrifice. It's the result of your presence. And you, through every breaking and rebuilding, you've learned this: the most sacred presence is when you can sit with yourself and not feel hollow. Now you can love, but you no longer lose yourself in that love. You can remember, but you no longer return to places that forgot you. You start choosing yourself, the same way God chooses you every day. No conditions, just return. Yes, there will be days when a song plays and the tears fall again. There will be moments when you still miss someone. But you know now you never have to go back to the version of you that had to forget herself to be loved. The greatest love doesn't come from someone who says, "I'll never leave you." It comes from you, the one who didn't leave yourself, even when the whole world turned away. If your heart is trembling as you hear this, I invite you to pause, place your hand over your chest, and ask yourself, have I loved myself the way I once loved them? If you've ever lost yourself in love, share your story. If you're learning how to come back to yourself, speak it out loud, because maybe your story will be the lantern that helps another Aries find their way through the night. And when you've chosen yourself, long enough, deep enough, true enough, you'll start to see the world around you differently. You'll step into your work not as a duty, but as a natural extension of your soul, because in the end, where is the place you truly get to live? It's where you don't have to perform anymore. And that is where your career, your calling, will begin to take on a new shape. There's a certain kind of silence that lives between the sound of keystrokes and the constant pressure of deadlines. It's the sound of a sigh. So familiar you've stopped hearing it, because it's become the background rhythm of your life. Aries, you've worked like the world would collapse if you paused for even 1 second. Not just the job, but the trust others placed in you. And maybe the trust you placed in yourself. You've walked into the office like a warrior, carrying wounds no one could see. You've smiled on the outside, even when your heart sank quietly inside. You've lived by rules that felt like survival codes. Work hard, speak less. Don't be impulsive. If you want to be trusted, you've got to endure. And you did. You endured faithfully, silently, sometimes almost to the point of disappearing. You held back your emotions to keep the peace. You folded away your creativity to fit the system. You stayed silent just so others could feel comfortable. But did anyone ever ask, how do you feel? You don't hate your work. You're just tired of playing a role. And that role, repeated year after year, made you forget the spark in your eyes when you first started. The world celebrates hustle. It glorifies numbers. It hands you pressure like it's praise. And sometimes it all feels meaningless. But you, Aries, you stayed. Not for applause, not for status, but because something deeper was calling. A quiet voice from within whispering, what you do is not just survival, it's service. You don't work to impress. You work to reach someone, to create change. Even if it's small, it's real, and that's what kept you going. On all the days you wanted to walk away, but now the sky is shifting. Pluto, the planet of power and deep transformation, is moving back. Saturn, the keeper of limits and structure, is softening its grip. And this cosmic movement isn't just an event in the sky. It's a sacred reminder. It's time to move in rhythm with your soul. From this point on, work is no longer a battlefield. It becomes a silent ritual where you offer your time, energy, and presence. As a form of devotion, you don't need to be a boss. You don't need to be the loudest voice in the room. You don't need 1,000 likes. You just need to be real, aligned with the frequency you were born to carry. Because when you live in your true rhythm, the world shifts with you. Opportunities come not because you chase, but because you attract, with the energy of clarity and healing. Career is no longer the place where you prove your worth. It becomes the space where you express the worth you've already discovered. Through every breakdown, through every lesson you paid for in tears, you start to see you can influence others without making a speech. You can make someone feel seen with just a gentle look or a quiet, "How are you doing today?" Because now you know. The deepest kind of success doesn't echo in applause. It lives in stillness, in the quiet knowing that you live true. You begin to work not from fear of being left behind, but from trust that your path is right. Even if it moves a little slower than others, you no longer follow blindly. You pause when needed, and most of all, you learn to say no to what drains you. Not out of selfishness, but because you've been so exhausted before, you forgot who you were. And now, each day you go to work becomes your way of loving life. You don't need much, just the space to be yourself, to create, to share something meaningful. And when you live, work, and give from a healed heart, you no longer expect anything in return, but strangely enough, that's when everything begins to find its way to you, because the universe always answers honest hearts. And you, Aries, you've been doing that for years, even when no one noticed. So now, as you sit and look back at the road you've walked, ask yourself, does what I'm doing still nourish my soul? If yes, keep going. If not, it's okay to shift, because you deserve a career that doesn't burn you out, but opens you wider to life. And when work no longer breaks you, you begin to walk through a different kind of door, a door where you relearn a powerful truth, to receive without guilt, to hold on without fear of loss. A new relationship. With money, there was a time when even mentioning money made you uncomfortable, a little embarrassed, even as if asking for fair value in return for your efforts was somehow inappropriate. You used to laugh it off when people asked for your rate, lower your standards just to avoid making others feel awkward, and you'd think to yourself, as long as they're happy, that's enough for me. Aries, you weren't naive. You were taught that giving is noble and receiving is selfish, and you believed it. You lived by it for a long time. You moved through the world as if your light only mattered when it was shining on others, and forgot that you deserved to feel warm too. You believed that if you love someone, you should give them everything. If you work from passion, money shouldn't matter. If you live with kindness, you should stay far from wealth. But then, there were those quiet moments, staring at bills you weren't sure how to pay, lying awake at night, watching your account balance bleed into red. And one day, sitting alone, you asked yourself, why am I always so depleted when I've been living from such a good place? It's not because you weren't good enough. It's not because the universe doesn't love you. It's because you forgot your right to receive. Money at its deepest core isn't about greed. It's energy. It's a current, a mirror that reflects how you see your own worth. When you accept less than what you deserve, the universe doesn't punish you, but it does respect your choice. And money, like an honest friend, only comes as far as you allow it. You don't have to burn yourself out to earn abundance. You don't have to sacrifice your soul to be cared for. You don't have to suffer to be worthy. You can be deep and prosperous, compassionate and comfortable. Aries, you've shined in the dark long enough. Now it's time to shine in broad daylight unapologetically. Money does not stain the soul. It's how you treat yourself that determines whether your spirit is nourished. When you start placing the right value on your time, your energy, your presence, you're not just teaching others how to treat you. You're telling the universe, I'm ready to receive. Picture this. One day you get paid without negotiating. You walk through the market and choose the best for yourself, no hesitation. You give someone a gift not out of obligation, but because you're full enough to give freely. That's not ego. That's the natural result of a heart that finally knows it's worthy. And when that day comes, money won't be something you fear or chase. It'll be a quiet companion, just enough to help you live, create, and give. You might need time to get used to this shift. There may be moments you feel selfish saying no to something unpaid. You may wonder if you're being too practical. But remember this, when you know how to hold onto your energy, you can give without running dry. A person who truly loves themselves is never afraid of abundance because they understand money can be a tool of light. When placed in kind hands, Aries, don't live so minimal that you forget. You were born in a vast and generous universe. Don't settle for just enough. If it's suffocating your spirit, you can open your heart to receive, not because you're greedy, but because you've grown strong enough to keep what you're worthy of. And when that happens, magic will unfold. Money will return like an old friend, quiet, humble, but always there when you need it. No more guilt for being paid. No more shrinking at the mention of rates. No more awkwardness when you say, "This is my fee." You will step into a new relationship with money, not of fear and scarcity, but of respect. You'll honor your effort, you'll honor your time, you'll honor you, and the universe, as the most honest mirror of all, will begin to honor you too, because once you learn how to receive, you'll realize that what you were chasing all along was never out there. It was waking up inside you, a soft voice, a sacred whisper, a feeling so familiar like your soul smiling. For the first time in years, because finally, you're ready to enter a new kind of awakening, not through words, but through presence. There's a moment so quiet, no spotlight, no applause, no one looking at you with awe, just you sitting alone in that old room, a warm cup of tea in your hands. When it hits you, you no longer need to be seen. That moment, Aries, it isn't loud, it isn't grand, but it marks one of the deepest turning points in a person's life. It's when your soul finally stops bracing, stops trying to prove, stops begging to be acknowledged, stops whispering, "Am I enough yet?" You're no longer rushing to become someone special. You no longer dress up your dreams so they'll look reasonable to others. You stop chasing someone's nod to feel worthy, because you found yourself in the silence. You begin to live slower, eat a meal without taking a picture, take a walk without your headphones, speak less but deeper. And strangely, it's when you stop trying to be loved that the world can't seem to take its eyes off you, because real light never has to shout to be seen. It simply shines, and those still enough will feel it. Aries, you're no longer someone trying to become the light. You are the light. You're the candle that's burned for years in the dark, not for anyone, not for some purpose, but simply because you were born to shine. Awakening doesn't come from mastering every teaching. It's not about meditating for hours. It's not about reading every self-help bestseller. It's about knowing when to pause, when you sit with your loneliness and don't feel empty anymore, when you smile alone and it's not sad, when you let your tears fall and don't feel weak. It's when you finally allow yourself to be real, tired, tender, raw, proud, not for others to accept you, but because God already did the moment you were born. You don't have to pray to become something. You already are. Sometimes the most honest prayer is simply presence. It's when you pass a field and pause just to look at the flowers. It's when you put your phone down to hear the rain. It's when you look someone in the eye and actually show up, and you begin to realize the world doesn't need you to be wildly successful or always strong or do something great. The world just needs you to come home to yourself. A soul that's real, that feels, loves, and remembers to say thank you. Aries, maybe you're walking into a season like that, where stillness isn't scary anymore, it's sacred. Where every moment you live honestly is a silent prayer to the sky. Where every breath you slow down is a deeper connection with the divine, stronger than any words. And then you start seeing the world differently, not bitter, not resentful. You see that everyone's fighting their own battles, and you choose to send peace instead of judgment. You don't need to be a healer, because the way you live is already light for someone who's lost their way. You begin to speak gently, even when you have the right to roar. You begin to forgive not because they deserve it, but because you understand forgiveness is a gift to your own heart. You learn to set boundaries, not because you hate anyone, but because you love yourself enough to stop self-harming. And yes, someone may say you've changed, and they are right. You're no longer the version of you who tried so hard to be loved. Now you love without needing it back. You give without needing credit. You live without needing anyone's approval. You are the light, quiet, steady, but never dimmed. Aries, if you've made it to this part of your journey, if you've walked through the deepest layers of sorrow, if you're starting to see that light inside you again, then pause, breathe, and be grateful. You don't have to prove anything anymore, because your existence is already a divine confirmation. You don't need to be chosen to shine. You are the light God sent into the world. And if you feel called, share this. Maybe your quiet glow will be the wake-up call for someone out there, still waiting for a sign to come back home to themselves. Thank you, Aries, for staying, for being real, and for choosing to go on, even when you couldn't see the way. I wish you a peaceful journey, one that doesn't need applause, just a heart that's still beating and still learning to love itself, still here, still listening. I want you to know this: you've just walked a journey, not with your feet, but with your heart. A journey not measured by how many days you've lived, but by how many times you chose not to give up. Aries, you didn't come into this world to become someone else. You came here to return to the original light that has always lived inside of you. No masks, no layers, no permission slips, in a world that keeps shouting. Be better, be faster, be prettier. You choosing to stay true to yourself is already an act of courage. And if no one's ever told you that before, let me be the first. Thank you. Thank you for not giving up. Thank you for still holding on even when no one saw you, no one understood, and maybe no one even asked if you were okay. Thank you for living honestly even when it meant you'd get hurt. Thank you for choosing kindness, even when the world didn't always give it back. And thank you, Aries, for not putting out the fire inside you, even when all you had left was a flicker in the thickest night. You know something. Your presence is already a gift. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to shine louder. You don't need to be some upgraded version of yourself. God didn't create you to compete. The universe didn't design you to live in borrowed roles. You were made to be you. And that alone is enough. You don't need to save the world. Just don't forget yourself. You don't need to heal everyone. Just hold the parts of you that once got left behind. You don't have to be strong all the time, because your softness is a kind of light too. Wherever you are on this path, at the start, in the thick of it, or quietly stepping through the final chapters, I hope you always remember this. You are not alone. Somewhere out there, another Aries is walking silently beside you. And in a world so full of noise, you choosing to pause, to breathe, to come back to yourself is more powerful than 1,000 motivational speeches. If today you feel empty, place your hand over your heart and close your eyes. Feel that beat. That's the rhythm of a soul who chose to stay. If you feel tired, give yourself permission to rest. No one was born to run forever. Even light needs the dark to be seen more clearly. And if today you feel like you're not enough, look back. At every moment you made it through. At every door you stepped beyond with no one watching. At every day you kept living, even when no one was there. That is your proof. Not because you were perfect, but because you're still here, and that is enough. I don't know exactly what you've been through, but if you've made it to this point, then you are one of the rare souls, brave enough to face the dark, in search of true light, and you deserve to be loved, in the same way you've loved others, not with conditions, not to get love back, but with the kind of love God placed inside you before you even took your first breath. I pray that on the road ahead you'll meet people as kind as you've been, loves that don't ask you to shrink, connections that don't make you tense up just to be accepted. I pray you'll have quiet mornings, sunny afternoons, and nights wrapped gently in your own softness. I pray you'll be seen, heard, held, and chosen, just as you are. No pretending, no perfection, just honesty with your own soul. Thank you, Aries, for listening, for living, and for having the courage to walk through what so few ever do. I wish you a peaceful journey, a gentle love, and a light that never goes out.